What's a hopper anyway? If you guessed that it's a person hopping up and down, you'd be wrong. Find out what a hopper actually is coming up next. Hi, welcome to Cooking from the Big Red Book, where we cook selected recipes from Charmaine Solomon's legendary The Complete Asian Cookbook. Now, we've been on Chapter 1, India. We've only scratched the surface, but we're going to skip ahead actually to Chapter 2, Sri Lanka. Why? Well, I'm actually going to Sri Lanka in 2 days, so I thought it'd be fun to cook something out of the Sri Lankan chapter, and there's something very special. So, what I'm making today is called hoppers. So, what actually is a hopper? Well, Charmaine tells us. She says they are bowl shaped pancakes made from a batter of rice flour, yeast, and coconut milk. Doesn't that sound good? It's like a bit like a dosa in terms of the crispiness around the edges, but it's got a soft center, spongy, kind of like a crumpet, which she mentions in the book. They are shaped like a bowl. You break them apart and you eat them with your curries and your sambals, or you cook an egg in it. It's really, really good. And we're going to make them. We have all the ingredients ready, so we can just cut over to the counter and I'll be back in a minute. So let me tell you what's involved to make our hoppers. First of all, Charmaine has us work with the yeast. We had to take 3/4 of a cup of lukewarm water, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of yeast, stir them together, and I have a timer set for 10 minutes because what should happen is that it should get frothy and bubbly. And it's actually starting to happen. It just started happening. All of a sudden, you see like this bloom of yeast. So this is going to be okay. But she warns us: if the yeast does not bloom, you have to start over with more yeast, more sugar, more water, because that means that packet of yeast was dead. Mine's not dead, thank goodness. So what else do we need? We have 3/4 of a cup of self-rising flour. Now, I don't have self-rising flour, so Google tells us that you can take your 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour, remove about a teaspoon and a quarter, scant quarter of flour, and replace it with a teaspoon and a scant quarter of baking powder, plus a pinch of salt. Stir that up together, and that's your equivalent of self-rising flour. We are going to use also 3/4 of a cup of rice flour and 1/4 of a cup of ground rice. Now I didn't buy ground rice, I made it. So I took rice and I put it into my spice grinder and I ground it and ground it and ground it. And I got a powder-ish, gritty substance, which I hope is correct, because no matter how much I buzzed it in the grinder, it still has this sandy texture, which might be what Charmaine is after. I'm not 100% sure. We will need coconut milk. So she wants us to use 3/4 of a cup of thin coconut milk, or if you're calorie conscious, use water, 3/4 of a cup of water. I opted for the coconut milk. So where do I get thin coconut milk? Well, I use a Goya can of coconut milk, shake it up to combine it, and what you have then is thick coconut milk. So she asks for thin coconut milk. In the book, towards the beginning, she says that to make thin coconut milk, you basically, like for this example, it's 3/4 of a cup of thin coconut milk. I use 1/4 of a cup of thick coconut milk and 2/4 of a cup of water. And you see it separates a little bit, but stir it together, and that's the equivalent of thin coconut milk. We also need salt, and that is actually it. The yeast is blooming nicely, so it's almost ready to use, and we'll move on to the next part. Okay, it's been a good 10 minutes, and that yeast has really bloomed. You can see how it's fluffy and foamy on top. That's the yeast that multiplied and went crazy eating this sugar, so it's very happy right now. So, okay, so we can start combining the ingredients. So, into a bowl, Charmaine says we put our dry ingredients in. We'll add the yeast and the coconut milk and the salt and stir it all together. And we'll leave it in a closed oven for at least an hour. And what should happen is that it should double in size and be bubbly. So it's kind of like making bread in a way. So let's mix it all up. So here is our self-rising flour. our rice flour, our ground rice, one teaspoon of salt, our yeast mixture, and our coconut milk. Maybe we'll give that a little stir to recombine it. See? Stir it up. So Charmaine tells us that this should have a thick pouring consistency once it's ready in over an hour. So it's hard to tell, she says in the book, exactly how it's going to come out. You have to sort of play around sometimes with extra water or coconut milk to thin it out, um, because it's she says it's impossible to give an exact measurement. She says you kind of just learn it by eye. So stir that up good so there's no lumps. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is cover it with a dish towel, put it to bed in the oven, which is not on. It's just with the door shut. It's a little bit warm because I have the light on in there, but it's not cooking temperature. And we'll come back in an hour. Okay, it's been an hour. I'm really excited to see how it looks. So take the towel off. Wow. Yeah. See that? Definitely got bubbly and big. Look at that. We're good. So I'll see you on the other side of the camera. And we're back. Took about an hour, but the dough is properly fermented, or batter, I should say. It's properly fermented and bubbly, and it's ready to cook. So let's move the red book out of our way and find out what's the next steps. So the yeast mixture should be of a thick pouring consistency, but thin enough to cover the sides of the pan with an almost translucent coating. And I know what she's talking about because the translucent coating on the top gets really crispy and lacy. That's what you want. She says to cook them over low heat. So how do you cook them? Well, use this. This is called an apatachi. This is a pan specifically made for making hoppers, and you can see by the acutely curved shape, it's sort of like a miniature wok, but it's just for making hoppers. So why do I have this? Many years ago, I was in Toronto in a neighborhood called Scarborough, and there was a Sri Lankan shop there, and I knew they had these, and I wanted it, so I picked it up. So I have made hoppers before, and I do have a long connection to the Sri Lankan community, which we won't go into right now, but it existed, and it was great until it wasn't, and we're gonna make hoppers. So Charmaine says to lightly oil the hopper pan over low heat, pour in a small ladle full of the batter, and immediately swirl the pan so the batter coats the pan 2/3 of the way up. And I know how to do that. You kind of do a little swirly thing. So put the apatachi on the stove, turn it on. She says low, and yeah, so yeah, this is happening. It doesn't stay. So we'll wait till that heats up. And I think I've said before that low on my stove is low. I mean, it's like super low. And I don't know if this is going to get hot enough really to cook the hopper, let alone an egg hopper, which has an egg cooked inside it. So I'm actually going to squeak the heat up a little bit, and I'll probably regret it. And by the way, the first hopper never comes out right. It always has to get scraped out of the pan. It's something that everybody just accepts. The first hopper is your test one. So let's see. I think that's gonna be hot enough to start. We'll see how it goes. So I'm gonna take paper towel and oil because that's how I was shown how to do it years ago. And I will, oil the inside of the apatachi. knowing full well that this first hopper is going to stick, but we're going to do it and hope for the best. So I'm going to use, she doesn't say how big of a scoop to use, so this is a half cup scooper. We'll see. I'm going to scoop out. Oh my goodness, the stove's hot. Whoa, I got to move that. Um, yeah, yeah, so not hot enough because it didn't sizzle. But anyway, the technique is to roll the batter 2/3 way up the pan, like that. Some of it's going to crawl up to the top of the pan, you see, and that's going to get lacy and cook. And then what's left will pool at the bottom into a spongy, thicker portion. So we'll put that here, like that. We'll move this because we don't want to burn all the hair off my arm or burn my skin. And she says cook it for about 5 minutes. So I'm going to set the timer. And I guess I'll stand here for 5 minutes. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. Let's check on the hopper. So I'll take the lid off. And, ooh, it looks like good things happened in this appetizer. So here it's cooked. And you get a special little spatula for it. So you have to just try to. And do you remember I said that the first one is usually your sacrificial hopper? This is the sacrificial hopper. It's stuck. It's stuck. Yep. Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. The next one will be better. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Here's something worth mentioning. I don't think any Sri Lankan cook uses one appetizer. I think they use 4, one in each burner, because you'd never get done that way, especially if you're feeding a whole family. Okay, let's see how this one came out. It looks golden and toasty inside. That's good. See if I can get it out. That's always the challenge, right? Oh. Well, yeah, all right. Yeah, it's just sticking in some parts, but I think for the most part, we have a hopper here. Okay, it's ready. Look at that. Look at that. See? Yeah. Okay, so I'll be the first to admit that these are not perfect looking hoppers, but I have 3, well, or 2.5. Okay, so we got the plain hopper. We have the egg hopper, which is like a plain hopper, except that there's one egg cooked inside. Same thing, just 5 minutes. And then we have a milk hopper. So the milk hopper has coconut milk, sweetened coconut milk on the inside. This one's stuck so badly that I could barely get it out. And I think it has to do with the syrupy nature of the sugar. I think it might have thickened and stuck. So I'm sure it tastes good, but it didn't come out looking like a bowl. So yeah, typically the hoppers are eaten with an accompaniment. A lot of times it's coconut sambal, but I don't have any. I could tell you that I put salt and pepper on my egg. That's an accompaniment. The sweet one you could eat it by itself, or you could put some sambal on it. I have what they call sini sambal here, which is a kind of like it's a sambal made from onions that are cooked down so they get super brown, and like a relish almost. I made this myself, but I didn't use Charmaine's recipe, so that's why we're not going to go into it in too much detail. But I'm going to put some sambal in my hopper. So I'll eat the plain one first. I should say I taste it. Mmm. Mm-hmm. Really good. Yeah. The taste is perfect. The taste is authentic. The crunch is perfect. Everything about it is great, except for the shape. Okay, an egg hopper now. Tear a piece. Get a little bit of that yolk. Mmm. Outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Really, really good. And now my poor milk hopper. Poor thing. Mmm. So sweet. And the the hopper dough itself is a little bit sour because it ferments with the yeast. So that's hoppers. Hope you enjoyed watching that. It's a bit of a challenge. And we'll see you next time.